Hey, what's going on, everybody? Today I wanted to actually share some things with you that I discovered when I was working on my update to Welcome to Canton City. During that process, I came across a couple of things in the Far Cry 5 map editor that I think might be very beneficial for those of you who map edit, especially if you are beginners. So the first thing that I found out is when you try to load into your map to play it and test it, you have the option to kind of go back into the editor during that time. I recommend not doing that. I don't know if this is an issue on console, but this happened to me when I was working on my Canton City update, and I was actually almost finished with it. Because what happened was when I went back to the editor, all of the scripts broke. And any AI character that was connected to any of the scripts unspawned. The actions were still there in the script, but the AI were not there. Also, teleporting spawn points were all gone. So this completely broke the entire map. Now luckily during that time I actually had a copy that I was always updating regularly, and so I just reverted to the copy of Canton City and just added some of the stuff that I lost. But yeah, when I discovered that was like my heart sinking into my stomach feeling, because I could not believe what had just happened. So if you ever end up, say you realize you may needed to add something into your map before you play tested it, don't hit back. Just don't do it. Save yourself the trouble. But anyways, so that's one thing I learned. Another thing is, if you have too many vehicles in your map, it'll actually reduce the amount of AI characters that can spawn in. So the amount of AI characters that can spawn into a map is 16. At that point, the game can no longer spawn in any AI characters. Now sadly 16 is still not a lot, but it's better than what most of us in the community was thinking it was 12 or 13. And I sometimes wondered why it seemed like the numbers would change and fluctuate sometimes, because I would count it occasionally. I had this theory that since vehicles do eat into the AI budget, are vehicles somehow playing into the reduction of the amount of AI that can spawn in? And so I did a test on an empty map, spawned in 16 AI characters, everything's all good. Connected 30 vehicles to a script, and then spawned all of them in, and tried to spawn in AI again, and it capped out around, I think, like 10 AI characters. And so that's something to keep in mind if you are making a map and you have vehicles. Now, if you're over budget, this is probably going to be more for those of you who do add a lot more vehicles other than just 8, but it is something to just keep in mind. So the next thing is, spawning in vehicles or AI may help with the map file size error issue. Now when I was working on Canton City, I was trying to bypass the map file size error quite often. And I even deleted some AI characters and missions. I felt like there didn't need to be that many, so I just deleted them. But I was doing the cop mission, and what I did was I put down 3 AI characters who were going to be the suspects. I did a test publish to see if the map file size error would show up, and of course it did. But I was trying to figure out why, because I deleted a lot of AI up to that point and felt like there shouldn't be any reason why this is a problem. Well, then I thought, well, maybe because they were connected to a script, maybe that made a difference. So what I did was took those 3 AI characters and connected them to a script, because they were going to be anyways. And then I did a test publish, and the map started publishing. And so I started doing that with vehicles as well. I couldn't get away with adding a single vehicle without the map file size error popping up. And so I decided to add a vehicle and then just spawn it in. And the map was starting to publish. And on top of that, when I found out that too many vehicles actually interfere with the spawning of AI, I then had to actually spawn in about half of the vehicles on the Canton City map that were actually there. Sadly, there's not that many vehicles when you're first playing, but that is partially due to remove enough vehicles so that way it's not interfering with the spawning of AI. And when I did that, I was actually able to add a lot more to the map and a little bit more detail in some places where I couldn't before, because before I would add like piles of newspapers on sidewalks and garbage on sidewalks and then test publish, and then the map file size error would show up. So if you ever run into the issue of the map file size error, and changing a lot of your map and flattening a lot of areas and terrain is not going to help, maybe try just spawning in some AI or maybe some vehicles onto the map instead and see if that helps, because it seemed to have helped me when I was doing my Canton City map. So next thing is, if you have a trigger event, if you have a vehicle connected to that event, obviously the option is when object destroyed. So ideally you would think, well, when the vehicle gets destroyed, then it would activate the script. Turns out if you actually take that said vehicle and you hit a destructible object in the world or in the map, it activates the script anyways. So this is just a thing to keep in mind for those of you who may rely on something similar to this or a sequence that's something like this, because you definitely don't want your scripts to be activating too soon because it could mess up a certain sequence. But it's definitely something to keep in mind when you're connecting vehicles to trigger events. So another thing too, just to let some of you all know, when I first started developing the update for Canton City, what I wanted to do was try to be more efficient with the object budget. And what I did was basically go back through the entire map and delete some objects that basically consisted of multiple objects, you know? And I just felt like it wasn't necessary. And so I found way better ways to reduce the amount of objects, but also still keeping objects looking the way they are. So like a tall skyscraper used to take up maybe like 48 objects because I was using smaller squares. Well, delete a lot of those and just use really large squares, and then you only have to use 4 or 5 objects. So that's kind of what I mean by that. But the biggest thing is the Watchdogs sidewalks. In the original version of Canton City, I was using these sidewalks. Well, it turns out these sidewalks take up a big chunk of the object count and the object budget. And so realizing this and seeing how much it is, I think it's like 30. I think it's like 30 count. And it's a lot, because you can just think, you could take an alleyway that you've made and you could put garbage piles, newspaper piles, garbage bins, a folded dirty mattress, graffiti on the walls, some wires hanging over the top connecting to both buildings. You could add 30 individual objects in this alleyway to add some detail, or you could just have one large looking sidewalk to take up 30 spaces of objects. So I didn't think that those sidewalks were necessary. Another issue that they have is it seems like it slows down the editor when you're trying to jump into the map to test and when you're trying to save the map. And I don't recall this being an issue in the vanilla editor, so I don't know if it's something to do with Steve's mod, but something to definitely keep an eye out for. Now, if you're making a small scale map and you want to have some good looking sidewalks, then they are good looking. They have a lot of cracks and, you know, little textures, different textures here and there. So they look great. It's just they really eat into the budget a lot. But yeah, so I took all those sidewalks out of Canton City and then replaced them with just a regular concrete slab. And then also changed downtown's sidewalks, because I was using these tiny little square ones, which looked nice too. You know, for one stretch of road, I think it was like 40. Took 40 objects for just one stretch of road because I was widening them, and it took like one stretch of road I think was like maybe 10 objects. So you do 10, 10, and then on the other side of the road 10, 10. So yeah, it was like 40 objects. So yeah, I went back through all that and just cleaned out the unnecessary objects and tried to lower it down, which also tends to help with the map file size error as well. But yeah, these are just the few things that I discovered going through the process of building and updating the Canton City map. And I just felt like these would be very beneficial for anyone that is map editing and any beginners too. So anyways, that's going to be it for this one. You all take care now. See you.